Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Make Believe. Believe it or not, it's back. We're back with more World and Economica. It's been a long time since we last had this series. Let's see. Last time was basically 4 months ago. I did record an episode that was never released because it got lost in my old hard drive. I tried to recover it, but it's been 4 months and nothing, so I kind of gave up on that. And I'm bringing the series back because I really want to see the continuation. So good thing I have 2 saves here, because then we can go on this one. Let's see if I can remember the characters. There is Lisa, Hagana, and the main character is, I believe, Yoshiharu. I believe we were baking some cookies. And then we had to open the door. And that's where we stopped. There stood a petite figure wearing a raincoat and staring down at an electronic notebook, typing away at it. Though what was a petite figure, there were bulges on either side of the hips, indicating that there were some large packages being transported. The figure was slim, but it was probably a boy. I don't remember if they ever confirmed, like on the recording that I lost, if this is indeed a boy or a girl. So this is surprising to me too. As I looked suspiciously at him, he started talking before looking up. Good afternoon. I'm with Kun Company with your usual vegetables. I also have some questions for Miss. And as he looked up, he froze. I could see beautiful blue eyes staring at me through large glasses. There were a few freckles around his small nose, so I realized he must have come from Earth, where the UV is harsher. Oh, so people born on the moon do not have freckles. Interesting. However, besides that, I could tell from one glance that he looked kind of dim-witted. And there's the usual Yoshiharu snark. Say what? When I asked him while he was just standing there, he took a big step back while keeping his eyes on me. It was midday, so there were passerbys as usual. He had attracted some odd glances, but he didn't move his eyes away from me. And then he regained his senses, looked at his electronic notebook, surveyed the surroundings, and looked at me again. What is it? He shrunk his shoulders reflexively and then asked me cautiously, This is the 6th Avenue Church, right? I pondered for a moment and then replied, Oh, don't give him any snark replies. Now that name does sound familiar. It's so right, I guess. It's a midway snark. Is my teacher, Miss Hagana, here? Miss Hagana. I repeated his words and couldn't stop myself from giggling. You're messing with the kid. I guess it was true that she was teaching. She's here. By the way, isn't it kind of dangerous to be standing there? After being told that, it looked like he finally realized he was smack dab in the middle of the road. Oh, all the way in the middle, huh? He stepped back quite a lot. While I thought he was kind of dim-witted, I did admire his shrunk steps while he was stepping forward, carrying all that luggage. It looked like he was used to transporting large items. So, what was it again? Yes? Didn't you say something about vegetables? He cleared his throat and took in a big breath. My name is Chris Kun, and I'm from Kun Company. No matter if you need fresh foods like vegetables or stationery, we are your one-stop source for delivery to anywhere on 6th Street. We at Kun await your orders. With that, he finished his clear speech in one go. It was probably totally drilled into him by his parents. Oh yeah, totally, I can completely see that. Even when he stood up straight, he was clearly shorter than me. Hagana was shorter than me, and he was still a bit shorter than her. Oh well, I thought as I pulled back. If you are looking for Hagana, she's inside. Thanks. I guess the fast talk only applied to his spiel, as the Chris I was looking at now averted gazes and walking to the church. Yeah, he's used to that speech that he had before. But everything else, it seems like Chris is very timid. At this point, I couldn't figure out if he was a guy or a girl. And when he took off his raincoat inside the church, my confidence fell even further. A threadbare sweatshirt that was obviously too large drooped over him. Below that were jeans with the pant legs totally rolled up, as well as a pair of worn-down sneakers. His blonde hair was popped up and rough, as if he had never used a comb in his whole life. However, when he folded up the raincoat and tried to jam it into the bag hanging by the cross straps over his shoulder, I caught a peek of the chest area through the overly large neckline of the sweatshirt. The chest area, huh, Haru? My new hunch was that Chris was probably a girl. I see, what did you notice in the chest area? Aren't you supposed to be in school now? While feeling a bit of guilt, I closed the door and asked, Huh? Right now, school's in lunch recess, so I'm doing the afternoon deliveries. Ah, I see. I guess you guys have long lunch breaks. Which means Chris is an elementary school student, and under 14. With a few exceptions, all the elementary schools on the moon have at least 2 hours of lunch recess. Why is it that long? Wow. Since I didn't really go to school, I had forgot about it. Ah, you're here to study while delivering the groceries? Huh? How did you know? If left to her own devices, she'd probably just stand there looking lost. So I started making Chris walk forward with me behind her, as if I was driving chickens around the yard. Of course you're gonna make that comparison, huh, Haru? And I can't help but notice that now you're using a female pronoun for Chris, after your last observation. Did you say so yourself before? That you had some question for Hagana or something? Yeah. Even though Chris was very timid, she had purposeful strides. Her outfit was definitely that of low-income earners in the outer districts. They were probably immigrants who came here to do manual labor. Even though she wasn't quite the street smart, she made large deliveries to help out her family during recess, and was even studying at the same time. While herding her like a farm chicken, yeah, we get it. You already mentioned that before. I felt a little envious of her hardiness. When we returned to the living room, it looked like Lisa was done with her phone call and was setting a microwave tray on the table. Oh yeah, that's right, Lisa was on a phone call, that's why you had to pick up the door. Oh, and I forgot we can do this. We could have done that earlier, but at least it wasn't any unique panel. Oh, I guess the first one, but I might have done that last episode, maybe. Been a long time. Oh, if it isn't Chris. Good afternoon. Oh, right. I guess today was the usual delivery day. I had totally forgot about it. Sounds like there's a lot you forgot. Of course, Yoshiharu with a snark. She wasn't angry at my jab and merely shrugged. Really, this is the one thing I just can't fix, I guess. While talking, Lisa accepted the vegetables and wheat from Chris' giant bag. This time there was a lot. There wasn't a mistake, was there? No problems here. Hal over there is also leaving here now. Before your delivery, we had run out ingredients, so I had gone elsewhere to pick up some personally. Ah, so that's it. I had heard that you went to some other store to shop, and I was wondering if it was because I delivered the wrong amount. She was timid and a worrywart. Oh yeah, for sure. Before Lisa said anything, she rubbed Chris' head gently. This might have been more effective than telling her 100 times not to worry. So, I guess you're here for Hagana? Ow! And I can't help but notice this typo. I had taken the bowl from Lisa and was steering its contents when I heard my name mentioned and looked up. He went back to bake the cookies. What? Go get Hagana for me. Oh, alright. But would you like to make cookies with us, Chris? I got up from the chair and looked in Chris's direction. It would be best if I didn't have to go call Hagana. After looking back and forth at the two of us, she replied while staring at the floor. I have a question about a problem, and, Oh? Well, I'll give the cookies to Hagana so she could bring it to class tomorrow. So please look forward to them, okay? Okay. That answer was unexpectedly full of energy. Elisa was also smiling with a satisfied look on her face. The cookies made by Haru and Lisa. I went over to call Hagana. When she peered out from the door after I knocked, I started wondering if Hagana and Chris were really both the same species. Yeah, he doesn't do well with Hagana. I remember that. Hagana didn't utter a word while staring at me without opening the door all the way. Perhaps she really was in a bad mood. What? Somebody named Chris is here. Said there was something about a problem she couldn't solve? With that, Hagana raised an eyebrow and then nodded slowly. I see. She nodded and was about to step back into her room for a bit, but then she opened the door further and looked down the hall. At that moment, Chris was coming over clutching her electronic notebook, which she probably used for her studies. Lisa said that she's using the table, so I got it. Hagana nodded, proceeded to invite Chris in, and then told me off. You're in the way. While being somewhat irritated, I stepped out of the way because I was actually blocking the entrance to the room. I sent Chris in with an apologetic face. I couldn't believe that someone like Chris would be so attached to Hagana. The world was full of wonders, I thought, as I headed back to the living room. Well, back to the cookies. Alright, I guess this is pretty much it. Lisa was spinning around the contents of the bowl while mixing. It's done. All that's left is to bake them. Easy, isn't it? It was pretty tiring, though. Alright, can you lay pieces of the dough over here neatly? Ugh. Don't me, mister. The cookies will turn out delicious because you did it to the end. I had wanted to question the basis of that claim, but it wasn't like she'd give me a proper answer anyway. Giving up, I used a spoon to scoop up some dough and laid it on the microwave tray, covered with baking paper. Well then, now that this is done, shall we get some lunch? Hal, you're eating too, right? Huh? As long as it doesn't cost any extra. Well, aren't you cute? Either case, I'm not charging you anything, so come eat. Besides, Chris here today, and I was thinking about doing something. Huh? Doesn't she eat at school? I kind of blurted out my response nonchalantly, but Lisa smiled at me with a troubled face. There aren't many things that come for free on the moon. I thought back to Chris' small and slim figure. Maybe she didn't have any money to eat lunch. And she came here for Hagana's math instruction. Lisa said as she was cleaning the cooking implements that we had to finish up using. Chris is also unbelievably smart, but realistically speaking, she wouldn't be able to move onwards with her education without a scholarship. Money. Apparently, she's going to hone her best subject, math, and then use that to earn a scholarship to go to college. Pretty young and already think about college, huh? In other words, this was a one-shot investment aimed at achieving that goal. Her timidness was only on the surface. Deep down, she was a genius. I felt pinpricks on my heart when I saw people like this who came from the earth. I knew it was meaningless annoyance and envy, but I couldn't do much about it. Well, the truly terrifying one would be Hagana, though. I heard that Chris, who no one would be able to teach math to at school, actually called her a genius. When she grows up, she looks like she'd be able to immediately skip into graduate school with a scholarship. I wasn't the type to be truly happy hearing praise, but all this about Hagana made me think that she probably really was something as far as math was concerned. However, both of them have some personality issues. Is everyone who's good at math this way? With my diss, Lisa pondered for a moment and chuckled. Well, I wouldn't say they have a personality issues, but they sure do have an air of an artist. Triss also says she would ponder tough problems while sitting places with a nice view. Though I guess being a genius needs something to balance it out. I started to wonder whether my recent issues with not training well had to do with the disappearance of this excitement I felt while I didn't really have a place to settle down. Not to mention Hagana, but Chris, if you listen to her, sounded like she was built on stubbornness as well. It wasn't a simple affair to skip lunch to learn from Hagana. Come here for studying while running errands during breaks during the school day. We're hearing a heartbeat. However, once I thought that far, I suddenly realized something. And what did you realize, Yoshiharu? If Hagana were that talented in math, could she be of use in training? Oh, you're trying to ask for her help? Is that what we're seeing here? What is it? Nothing. I had stopped setting down the cookie dough, so I started up again, hurriedly. But that idea was still bouncing around in my head. Could help you out? Help both of you out, in fact. When I had started trading, I had tried out various techniques, but not math. However, the one thing I didn't try was to use math for trading. Guess not. A field with such dignified title as financial engineering was something that would be way too difficult for someone like me, who never really went to school. Yet you're doing stock trading pretty well, apparently. It was something you learned in graduate school after learning math as an undergrad, though it wasn't something I could really try out. Yeah, I'm surprised you're doing that well without math. But what about Hagana, who was quite talented in math? I had finished laying out the cookies and felt that it would be a good idea to look into this further. Plan out for the future. All done? Yeah. Even before baking them, it looked as if the raw cookies were about to give off a buttery scent. That's a nice scent. Lisa picked up the tray, put it into the microwave, and gave the dial a good twist. Alright, let's go get some lunch, okay? In sync with her suggestion, I took off my apron and shoved it at Lisa. Oh yeah, he was wearing an apron when he opened the door. Don't need lunch. You changed your mind? What? Hey, wait, how? I ignored Lisa's demand and ran back to my room. Gonna work on that idea about getting Hagana to help you with the math? And then I turned on my computer and raced to open the search engine. Investment methods using math were something that the pros used to make boatloads of cash. There was nothing more encouraging than being able to use that. Buried that hope in my heart, I dove into the net. It's 5. Oh, hey, I actually got it right. Startled by a voice, I sprang up. Hagana was standing outside the door. It's already 5. Why aren't you coming? She had stated quite bluntly. With that, I finally remember what happened that morning. Oh, yeah. Perhaps I was tired, or perhaps I was panicking, but my voice was hoarse and I couldn't quite speak clearly. I had immersed myself, pondering out a new way of trading with Hagana at work on financial engineering. Furthermore, since I actually had no clue about math, it was quite tiring. Hagana's brows conveyed a doubtful look, but she didn't really ask me anything. I hurriedly got ready. Out of caution, I placed my computer into my bag and essentially took all my life possessions with me as I left my room. Hagana had her usual black attire and her black bag giving off a grim atmosphere, as if she were attending a funeral. Not just black clothing, but a black bag? An orange bag wouldn't have worked with these clothes. Wow, looks like you do have a sense of aesthetics. True. Hagana, who was further down the hall, turned around with a big frown. Of course, unlike you, Brett. When we first met, she kept calling me smelly, and this morning she said I wore rags. Shouldn't someone as cheeky as her need some spanking? Okay, calm down, Yoshiharu. Hey, you call me Brett again. Huh? I'm telling Lisa. Hagana apparently totally yielded to Lisa. Yep, that's the one person they both can't go against. To be honest, it wasn't even at the level of childish quarreling, but Hagana stood motionless as if she had made a big mistake. I walked past her, feeling all smug. At that instant, Hagana's hand grabbed my hand. Please, don't tell Lisa. She looked like she was about to cry any moment now. I couldn't keep up with my racing thoughts. A girl about the same age as me had thin, downcast eyebrows and tightened her lips to the point of quivering. Furthermore, her slender hand grasped onto my hand as if it were a lifeline. In that situation, there wasn't much you could do, even if I had done loads of weight training. I had forgotten I was dealing with Hagana and tried for the life of me to find the proper words. In that regard, my memories were flashing by me as if I were on the verge of death. I heard that this happened to the people who were on the verge of death because it was something to allow the person to find possible routes of salvation from past memory. Really? Is that why people relive their lives at the last moment? Not sure how they would find a path of salvation there, but okay. And what I finally remember was something terribly simple. I won't. Really? Hagana was looking at me almost clingingly with upturned eyes. This was the face she had when I was about to spill the beans about the incident with Toyama. I guess she wanted to keep up appearance with Lisa even more than I had imagined. Yeah, cause Lisa is being her lifeline, basically. After I nodded, she stared at me for a while before finally letting go. Well, what is it? Hagana flung a totally unintelligible question at me, after slowly returning to her normal poker face self. What? I'm asking you, what is it? Her brows were showing signs of frustration. While being shocked at this utter transformation, I eventually asked back, totally not understanding the meaning of her words. Well, what are you talking about? I don't understand. I really didn't understand. Thus, I couldn't help but feel hesitant at the unreasonable Hagana, who had posed me an unintelligible question while looking at me with frustration when I wasn't able to answer. However, Hagana's behavior was also kind of strange. And then, the reason for this came to light. While being frustrated, she finally turned her eyes away and responded painfully. Your name? I somehow managed to hold it in my laughter, but I did end up spitting out some air lightly. I guess she never learned his name. Hagana looked at me with scorn in response, as if I were some rude person. However, her tightly sealed lips made it obvious, even to me, that she was trying to hold in her embarrassment. While leaking some air between my teeth, I replied, Kawada Yoshiharu. Okay, so yeah, it is Yoshiharu. Huh? I don't remember being that long. Are you making fun of me? Hagana's glaring eyes were saying that to me, but I simply accepted that and replied, "Oh yeah, that's my real name. How was the name that Lisa gave to me? 'Cause Haru, I guess." Hagana looked at me, totally shocked. "Your real name? Are you an idiot?" Those words simply flowed out of her mouth. "You also ran away from home, so it's not like you go report me, right?" They're both runaways. It's like a thief reporting a crime. Hagana might be strange, but she fully understood the meaning of a runaway youth letting someone know their real name. She was definitely intelligent, and she wasn't lacking common sense. But there was no need to tell me that. Huh? A reason? But well, there was that. What? Hagana had no expression on her face, but she was almost asking me angrily. This time, I was a bit bashful when answering. I'd never been called by a nickname before. Huh? Around me were a lot of rowdy people older than me, so they simply called me by my first name. I also didn't really go to school, and besides, nicknames were kind of a matter of fact, so I didn't like them. They made me feel kind of funny or something. There was a strange feeling I couldn't quite name when Lisa called me Hal. It was definitely not a bad sensation. However, with the current situation, it didn't feel quite right. Feeling all flippant over being called a nickname by some woman amounted to being a coward. So if you're gonna call me something, then Kawada would be kind of bad. You could just call me by my first name. Well, if that annoying lady weren't around, you could just call me Brad or Hey You, and I wouldn't mind. With my light proclamation, Hagana looked down and pondered my words. She looked like a kid who had been tricked too many times. A skeptical girl in black clothing. The notion that it was clothing appropriate for something like a funeral popped back into my head. I was about to say, like, you mentioned that before. Or perhaps it was the clothes that she had on her when she was sold. Yeah, I sort of remember that story that Lisa told us. So, can I just call you Hagana? She nodded to my question. After nodding, she opened her mouth to try to say something. I didn't catch what she said and asked her, but she returned to her senses quickly and shut her mouth. And then she had an icy expression on her face, as if she overly cleansed all emotion for herself, then turned her cheek towards me. In front of me was a side profile, a barrier that would reflect back any world hurled at it, possessed solely by females with tough personality. Huh, how specific. We should get going with the clothes shopping. Oh, that's right. You guys promised Lisa you guys would do some clothes shopping together. Since you guys been using the same clothes all this time. She uttered those words robotically and started walking out. The speed of her change in expression and behavior left me dumbfounded. And then, a few steps ahead of me, she apparently noticed that I wasn't following her. She spun around like a well-made toy. What are you doing? Aren't you coming? Are you an idiot? I replied tiredly with a, yeah, and started walking. Perhaps she wasn't satisfied with that response because she lifted an eyebrow. But in the end, she didn't say anything and turned around walking forward silently. Lisa, who had been cleaning up the church, looked at us walking at a distance from each other and said, "Have a safe trip," with a wry smile. The rain had already let up. Now, I could keep going because I had no idea how long this part's gonna be. You know what? Let's have the shopping trip this episode. The carved out limestone cliffs and the winding narrow streets drenched with water were sparkling under a simulated sunset. Normally, I'd be exploiting the low gravity and taking fly leaps from wall to rooftop and vice versa, but Hagana wasn't cut out for it. Of course, it wasn't that she was a girl. There was a sports program where a bunch of girls with bodies as flexible as felines will run through very complicated terrain as if they were a ninja warrior. So he's saying specifically Hagana. Not because she's a girl, but because she's Hagana. And I'm not sure how long I want to make the episodes now. We'll see. However, these activities just didn't fit Hagana. It would be more fitting for her to be scrunching up her eyebrows and sipping tea outside of the boisterous and sweat-filled stadium. And so, we were currently walking towards the shopping center, supposedly located on the second block, and Hagana would look back at me occasionally. And they were walking for a long time, I hear. It wasn't that she was carrying a torch for me or anything like that. I'm just imagining here that's why she's stopping and looking back at him, because she's carrying a torch. That would... It was just too much for me to be able to walk alongside a girl, so I kept a bit of a distance. Since we were walking slowly through the streets, there were a lot of things I wanted to see. Therefore, I could understand Hagana's irritation, seeing as I had trailed behind so many times. At any rate, there wasn't a thing in this world that you couldn't attach a price tag to, and therefore the streets were a treasure trove of information to me. It's because as long as something could be sold, someone would be earning a profit on it. What I want to know was who, in this case. For example, I myself couldn't make money by going to the building materials business, selling materials and working in construction. However, I could invest in a company that did that and be able to share in the profit. I could do this via stock investment. If I could earn money without having to pour hours of my own sweat into it, then wouldn't that be the proper thing to do? I had less respect for those who worked the soil and grew vegetables like my parents, and more for those who bought the crops from my parents and sold them at a profit. By just investing in the later party, I could even save myself in the work of doing the actual reselling. But if it isn't for that first party, the second party wouldn't exist. You couldn't invest in a building company if there wasn't people building. Just like people wouldn't be able to buy the crops to sell them if there weren't people farming the crops. By glimpsing at the houses along the street, the building materials indoors, the toys hanging from the window frames, and the furniture and electronics that could be seen, I could determine what people in the income bracket here bought and what was currently popular. What people passing by were, what terminal they had with them, and what stores they went into. If there were indeed 4,000 or so companies trading on the stock exchange, one would definitely be able to see a product from at least one of the companies everywhere you went. The seeds to money-making lay all over the place, and I was merely peeling back the fruit to get back at the seed. And this method was the fastest and best way to get rich. Or should have been. Right now, my confidence was wavering as to whether this was really the best way. As a result, I ended up getting Hagana to learn financial engineering and then leveraging her power. But was that really possible? First, would Hagana be able to understand financial engineering? And second, would Hagana simply help me? We're here. Hagana stopped and said those words to me, and they finally stopped walking. Okay, the music. Look at the street. We had to walk along a street jam building between 6 to 7 stories high, which felt like they could fall over any moment and block our way, and went up the crude steps. We had passed a woman with their shopping bags full of ingredients, and students with lightly worn sausages in their mouth. Hagana was standing at the top of the steps. There, beyond the rusty iron handrails, extended a street lined with shops doing their very best to show off their tidiness. This was supposedly the second block shopping center. The streets extended outward, flanked by buildings on either side, and the flow of people appeared like a small river sandwiched between the run-down commercial building. The incoming foot traffic was stopped up by the steps beneath my feet. Seeing this, I realized that where I stood was a vestige from the days past during the expansion of our Luna city. Originally, this place was the edge of the city. This elevated area was a foundation for a dome that covered the sky, programmed to act out the effects of day and night. Oh yeah, that's right, they have a fake day and fake night, because moon. Currently, the edge of the dome was much further away, and the levees like this were obviated by advances in technology. However, precisely because this was ancient, actually standing here gave me a literally awesome view. I wasn't sure whether it was made of concrete or carved out of the lunar terrain, but there was definitely something like a levee extending to my left and right. I have no idea what that word is, and I was hoping it would not come up again. It was immediately swallowed by a myriad of buildings, so I couldn't follow it for very far, but was able to see a piece of lunar history there. What? Hagana looked at me with a puzzled face. It looked like scrunching up her brows was her instinctive response to anything puzzling. I looked up and explained to her. This was a vestige of where the ceiling dome used to be. Hagana looked up at the sky and fixed her eyes on the faint seams of the dome. You're kidding. I'm not lying. When I was around 8 or something, there was a project to build an even bigger dome over the small dome. Is that really true? Hagana looked at me doubtfully. I shrugged and replied, I wouldn't lie about something you could simply look up and figure out instantly. Hagana drew her chin in a bit and nodded, seeing the reason in my reply. And thus, I remember even now that the moon used to have 2 layers of sky. I looked up at the sky as I was talking and noticed Hagana looking at me. Finally, Hagana looked up at the sky herself and muttered, Wow. It wasn't just one word, but the brevity indicated the strength of the thought behind it. I was excited, as if she were giving me a compliment. I had come from Hagana. I know because I was born in the moon. I don't really know much about the Earth, but I know most of the stuff about the moon. Born in the moon? Oh? I didn't tell you? I was born when the first wave of the first immigrant group arrived in the city. I'm about the same age as the city. Huh. He is one of the first people born on the moon. Hagana looked like she was truly quite surprised, and I felt a little pride in myself. However, the surprise from her face eventually disappeared, and she returned to her normal poker face and said, Well, it takes many years for a city to be built, and so you can't be of the same age. Well, the time it takes for a human to be created isn't counted in age, right? I guess you're right. For a second, I thought I had surprised her again, but Hagana nodded as if she understood some profound truth. Wait, you can't count in age? Well, looking up at this again once in a while, I do wonder at the amount of effort put in to create this. As I talked, I squinted at the dome that made up the sky on the lunar surface. As one of the top public works projects in the history of the lunar surface, it involved over 1,000 different enterprises. However, whenever I looked up at the dome inside it, it wasn't about the technology that made this dome possible, but something easier to understand. The infrastructure of the city was supported by Emerald Industries, and its related companies supposedly made up 40% of the participants in that project, and its 24 billion mu profit that year remained the record for the highest annual gain for this day. Of course, on Earth, there were many conglomerates whose annual earning exceedingly this ghastly amount, due to the vastness in history and scope of the planet. However, on the moon, this was a record that was off the charts. There were anti-monopoly laws to prevent a breakdown of competition, and people said that if those laws weren't there, The Sea of Tranquility would already had Emerald Industries logo engraved on it. The 24 billion mole price tag was enough to make anyone faint just thinking about it. For people working the shops along the second block of the 6 out section, hourly wages most likely range between 5 and 7 moles. Let's say they made 80 moles working 10 hours a day. Working 30 days non-stop in a month resulted in 2,400 moles. Working 10 hours every day for a month, a year would be 28,800 moles. Working from the age of 20 to the age of 60 would be a bit over 1 million moles. Rent and living expenses were rather high on the moon, and therefore, living with just those earnings was difficult. I'd think you were mad if you were to say that living from meal to meal was fun. You wouldn't be able to enjoy the various entertainment options in the White Belt and Newton City, and if you were from the Earth, you wouldn't even be able to afford to go back. To live a life where the things you can do vastly outnumber the things you could do would make life meaningless, in my opinion. To tilt this balance, one would need power or money. And using money and power, Emerald Industries left a mark where no entity has left a mark before in the history of the moon. Is there something in the sky? I came quickly upon hearing Hagana's words. Nah, I was just thinking a bit about an existence above the clouds. Of course, being born on the moon, I had never seen real clouds before, but I knew about them through videos and stories. Thus I felt that this expression was quite suitable. Hagana, who definitely wouldn't know about Emerald Industries, looked questioningly at the sky and then stared at me with surprise. You believe in God? I know, right? The way he phrased that really does seem like he's talking about God. You mean like what Lisa talked about? Oh Lord, who lives in the kingdom of heaven. People on earth believe that the afterlife existed beyond the heavens. Certainly, to people interested in making money, the moon was probably heaven. But in this era, there probably weren't many people who used that word to mean anything other than a happy place. It's like people started to not think of an actual difficult to use in outdated books when the word book was mentioned. Something like God can exist, right? In response, Hagana neither agreed with nor refuted my statement, and she merely stared at me. She had the normal expressionless face, but looked a lot more serious than usual. I was beginning to wonder if she had gotten mad at me for speaking like I was ridiculing Lisa, but Hagana eventually closed her eyes slowly. And then, like a proud stray cat, she threw her face to the side, avoiding my gaze. I also think so too. Hey, at least you two agree on something. I was about to tease her by mentioning how it was quite rare for her to agree with me, but in the end, I kept my mouth shut. It was because that side profile looked terribly sad. Looking at her visage, I ended up remembering what Lisa had said. Lisa had wondered if perhaps Hagana had been bought with money. A girl who might have passed like that, agreeing sadly that God didn't exist, left a very deep impact. Uncomfortable at the silence, I veered the situation back towards talking. But I think we're gonna stop here. I thought the trip would be faster, but we're technically not even shopping yet. So let's save over the new one. And let's go back. So that's it. That's our first episode since we got back. I should be getting this episode every week now, but we'll see. So with that being said, see you next time. Bye.